Hey everyone, welcome to another round of art tips. Usually, in my videos, I talk about realistic drawing in traditional techniques. But today, I want to show you something different. I've got 5 unconventional drawing techniques with detailed explanations. Hope you find it interesting. So, let's kick it off with the simplest one. The first technique is called thread drawing. For this, grab paper, threads, any watercolor paint, water, a palette, and a brush. Just like it sounds, we'll be drawing with thread. Here's mine, a size 10 cotton thread. Get something similar in thickness. Wet the thread in water to help it soak up the color better. Squeeze out the extra water. Now, paint the thread. I do it by picking up a bit of gouache on the brush and pulling the thread through it. Play around with the paint consistency for the best result. After that, it's easy. Lay out the thread on paper in interesting angles and curves. Put another sheet on top, press it a bit and pull the thread. Voila! An intriguing pattern. Don't be afraid to get creative. Mess with colors, length, and thread curves. Even though this might seem like just fooling around, you can make legit pieces. I saw a cool video where they drew a portrait in an ancient Greek style using thread. So, thread is more powerful than you think. Stamping, or stamping technique, is pretty popular among exotic methods. The idea is to make imprints on the surface using stamps. Stamps can be anything. Coins, fruits, threads again, even coffee cups. It all depends on your imagination. Today, I'm doing leaf stamping. Grab paper, gouache, brushes, water, a palette, napkins, and of course, leaves. Any kind works, but they've got to be fresh to avoid falling apart. Start by putting the needed colors on the palette. Then, make bold strokes on the leaf. Leave spaces and make sure to fill in the major veins. Now you'll see why. Flip the leaf onto the paper, press it a bit, and carefully lift it. What does this remind you of? I think it looks like a tree. So I decided to do a second drawing in a forest landscape style. Here's what I came up with. Next up on the list is drawing with a kneaded eraser. For those who aren't artists, I'll explain what a kneaded eraser is. This thing is something like an eraser, but super soft and elastic, almost like clay. You're probably wondering how you can actually draw with it, right? Well, let me show you. All you need is some paper, a graphite pencil, a kneaded eraser, a cloth, a blending stump, and graphite dust. You know, the stuff that's left after sharpening pencils, or you can go all out and sacrifice a pencil. Stick to the soft grades, like 5B and softer. Here's my sheet. I threw another one underneath to avoid smudging. First, I sprinkle graphite on the sheet carefully and evenly. Then, I blend the powder with a cloth, mostly in horizontal directions because I'm going for a landscape. No need to go all the way to complete blackness. The color here is usually good enough. Brush off any extra graphite dust. In the end, this is what my background looks like. Now, I grab the kneaded eraser. I use it to lighten up the paper in the necessary spots. You can go for regular erasing motions or do some dabbing. The kneaded eraser gets dirty real quick, so you've got to knead it constantly. The plus side, it takes on any shape and doesn't mess up the sheet. Alright, this stage is done. Next up, I take a paper blending stump, dip it in graphite, and start adding in the missing bits. Trees, land, shadows on the mountains. When everything's pretty much set, you can add some detail with a pencil, using a slightly careless technique. This drawing is just an example, so I'm not putting in too much effort, but this technique can do more. So, here's what I got. Up close, it might not look that awesome, but from a distance, not too shabby at all, and it only took 15 minutes. Moving on to the splatter technique. If you're a regular viewer, you've seen this as an extra method in a couple of my works. Now, I'm going to try making a whole drawing with it. For this, I'll need paint materials again. Pay attention to the brushes. I advise firm ones, preferably synthetic or bristle. Before I start splattering, I dampen the sheet with a bit of water so that the initial drops get a little blurry. I also dilute the paint in the tray until it's nice and flowing. Oh, by the way, I'm using watercolor. Okay, I start splattering. You can do it like me, or tap the brush on another object for bigger drops. The key is to gauge the amount of paint on the brush to avoid making blotches. Also, watch out for paint dripping from your finger. Blotches are the main challenge. Now, I'll let you guess what I'm painting. Haven't figured it out? It's a tree. I know blue trees don't exist, but the color looks nice. Green would be kinda dull here. To make it look more like a tree, I'll draw the trunk. Better, right? I'll add more drips to the tree to make the crown denser. By the way, let me show you what it looks like from the side. Notice how I hold the brush really close to the sheet. It helps me splatter in the right spots. So, this is the end result. This method isn't just for trees. You can use it for various things. Let your imagination run wild. Now onto the last technique for today, monotype, the fancy name. Once again, we'll need standard colors and 2 sheets of paper. Since you'll be using a lot of paint, it's better to go with gouache, acrylic, or even oil. Before diving in, I wet the sheet thoroughly on both sides, like in the wet-on-wet technique with watercolor, so it doesn't warp. Adding a bit of white to the base helps too. Then, I start laying down thick strokes with different colors. Here's a handy trick. Wipe the brush with something, like toilet paper or a napkin, before rinsing it to avoid dirtying the water. Work quickly so the paint stays mobile for the next stage. Try not to mix the strokes. Once I'm done with the paint, it turns into a bit of a mess resembling a tree. Now, onto the second stage, the interesting part. I take the second sheet, and you probably guess what's coming. Carefully, I press it onto my drawing and smooth it out. After that, you'll need to remove the sheet. An important point here. Depending on which edge you start tearing from, you'll get different blurring. I chose to tear from left to right diagonally, and I got this cool effect. Like the wind is swaying the tree. The tree smeared a bit, so I'll redraw it on the second sheet where something like a matte board frame appeared. Okay, I'll finish drawing the tree and tweak the edges a bit. Let's see what we get. I hope you enjoyed these unique techniques. They're pretty simple, so some might see them as a kind of fun experiment. But I actually have a couple of more serious and interesting techniques up my sleeve, like the Ebru technique, painting with ink on water. So, show your interest with comments and likes to get more views on this video. I'll definitely make a follow-up. Happy drawing to everyone, and catch you on the channel. Goodbye.